Hello, Kern here. Welcome to week 8. Week 7 was really interesting. I'm so happy to see your projects coming along and hosted to GitHub Pages. And it makes me realize that time is flying by. It's already, October 27th. So we've got, 1, 2 more weeks until the last week. And I want to point out that the last assignments are going to be due on November 16th. And that's here in the syllabus too. It says last assignment due November 16th. So the course is going to go really up until November 16th. But November 9th is going to be when I launch the last week of the course. So let me talk about what we're going to do this week in week 8. First, I'll start with the week 8 reading and lecture. Please read chapter 12. Facet into multiple views. This is really one of my favorite chapters of the whole book, and it's one of my favorite topics of all data visualization because this is where things really come together. The visual encoding with the marks and channels, and the interactions on single views, and also things like filtering and aggregation. Everything sort of comes together when you have multiple linked views. I want to just sort of mention what I think are the coolest topics from this chapter. One distinction I think is pretty important is the distinction of multi-form visualizations versus small multiples. Multi-form meaning there's going to be multiple visualizations that have different visual encodings. They're really different visualizations. But small multiples means that it's like really a copy of the same visualization, but just with different data feeding into it. These are both valid ways to facet views, to have multiple views. Linked highlighting is one of the most common forms of multiple linked views, where when you select one thing in one view, the mark or marks in the other views that correspond to that selected item also get highlighted at the same time. That's linked highlighting. There's also the overview detail scheme, which is sort of universal in data visualizations in the wild, where there's one view that shows an overview of the whole data set or a longer span of time, for example. And then there's another view that shows the detail of a certain focused area. That's the idea of the overview detail design choice, as she calls it in the book. There's also the concept of details on demand, and that sort of goes along with the focus plus context, or the overview detail pattern. And this is actually Ben Schneiderman's mantra: overview first, zoom and filter, and then details on demand. Details on demand is, for example, tooltips. I think that would be considered details on demand, where you click on one particular mark and you get a lot of details about that. Linked navigation is also a really common pattern. That means that the viewport that you define in one view defines how zoomed in another view is. And this is different from taking a subset. This is actually directly setting the domain of a view. So, for example, zooming into a certain region of time with linked views, or zooming into a map and having a mini map that shows you where you are on the globe. These would both be examples of linked navigation. And then there's the concept of superimposing layers. This is also a very common pattern, particularly with maps. Maps are composed of layers, and a lot of visualizations are composed of layers. Like, for example, a line chart with multiple lines is a good example of superimposed layers. And I think the coolest thing about layers is dynamic layers, where you can do something and one of the layers will pop out. And I think that's the coolest thing about layers, dynamic layers. So that's my take on chapter 12, facet into multiple views. Also, please watch Tamara Munzner's take on it. 10 minutes of her lecture is about the stuff in this chapter. Next, I'll talk about research interactive visualizations. In this assignment, I'd like you to search the web and find one interactive data visualization that must have one of the following interaction patterns from chapter 12. And also, the visualization must not be on blocks.org. It should be like a real-world product or a standalone project. And also, it must not be one that another student submitted already. And I have a mechanism for checking this. But first of all, you should find a visualization, interactive visualization with multiple views in the wild that has one of the following interaction patterns: linked highlighting, linked navigation, overview detail, details on demand, or dynamic layers. It just has to have one of these, any one of these. It could have multiple, but at least one it needs to have. For the submission of this, please, as your first thing, once you find a visualization that meets this criteria, put your name into this spreadsheet and also put the link. This is so that you can put your link here, put your name here, and claim that, okay, I'm gonna use this link for this assignment. And you should also check through here if anybody else picked that link already. And if somebody did, then you need to pick something else, a different link. Once you've claimed your link, I want you to create a document, like a Google Doc or a Word document. And in this document, you should describe the visualization, include a link to the visualization, include at least one screenshot of the visualization, state which of the above interaction patterns are present, meaning which of these are there in the visualization. And then most importantly, this is weighted as 15 points. Explain why that interaction can be considered as the one that you stated it is. Like, state which one it is. For example, this one has linked highlighting. And then you should explain it can be considered linked highlighting because, and then, write some explanation, like, because when I hover over something in this view, all the other, corresponding things highlight in the other views. So that's what should be in your document. And then once you're done, post the link and also post the document in the course Slack and submit the document as the submission in Canvas too. So I think this should be interesting, and I really look forward to see what you all find out there on the web. Next, I'd like to talk about plan your final project video. At the end of this course, you will be expected to create a video presentation of your final project. And I think this is really the thing that you're going to get out of this course, a concrete thing that you can show people and say, look, I did this. And, so I want you to put some effort into planning out what you're going to say in the video. For this assignment, I'd like you to create a document and create an outline structure of the main points you want to talk about in the video. And I'd suggest to consult your project proposal for ideas. Like, for example, you should definitely include a summary of the data and its source. And you can take this, straight out of your proposal document. And also be sure to include the main questions and tasks that the visualization actually is able to address once it's done. And also you should describe each of the views on the page and describe in the video, how you can interpret and read each of these views. Say the x-axis is this and the y-axis is that and color is this other thing, like that. And also, if you make a video without planning, it's easy to forget certain subtle interactions. So make sure to enumerate all the possible interactions in your project. So this document, it should really just be bullet points, just bullet points with maybe some sub-bullet points. Don't go too deep, maybe like 2 or 3 levels deep, but please don't write paragraphs. This is just planning the talking points of the video. And by the way, the video should only be 5 to 7 minutes. It should be less than 10 minutes definitely. So plan with that in mind. your points should be concise. This outline can also serve as sort of a plan or a template for your final project report, which will be due next, the week after this coming week. And that should be the README of the project repository. So if you want to get started early, by all means, go ahead. Also, creating this outline will help you understand how far you are right now from being done with the project. And being done with the project should happen in 2 weeks from today. You should be done with the project. So keep that in mind, and maybe put in a push on your project if it's really far from being done right now. So that's the assignment. Plan final project video. Now I'd like to discuss. This is the participation grade for the week, and I'd like you to just participate in any discussion in the course Slack. That's what this participation is all about. So if there's no interesting discussion going on, start a new topic. For example, if you have ideas for application areas for visualization, I had this idea today. What if you made a visualization of Git history, so you could open up any Git repository and see, who committed at what times and how frequently. Wouldn't that be cool? That's an example of something you could, discuss about. So if you have, project suggestions for other people or yourself, new ideas, general questions about anything, or more complaints about D3 and JavaScript, I know I'm throwing you into the deep end, and in a way I'm sorry, but in a way I'm not, because you're getting a lot out of it, right? So please paste your Slack post as the submission in Canvas for this assignment. So that's what we've got for week 8. Looking forward to it, and good luck.